Welcome to episode 4 of the Crackpot podcast with James LaFond and Lynn Lockhart. This episode was taped July 5th and will be presented in 4 parts. You are listening to part 1. Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Crackpot podcast with James LaFond and Lynn Lockhart. Hey James, how are you?
Hello, Lynn. I'm doing okay. I slept yesterday.
I'm always glad to hear that. Yesterday is also the day that your interview went live with Kevin Michael Grace.
I was offline at the moment. I didn't realize I was writing a piece while the Negroes next door were setting off firecrackers, screaming, and throwing trash in the alley.
So you missed the big announcement.
Yes, I had to unhook from the internet. I had not slept much for 3 days. I think it was a total of 7 hours or something, and I was starting to hallucinate. And I also got really drunk. On one of these evenings, I was interviewing a fellow who was not Big Ron and did not have Ron's penchant for the pace. And it was just a situation that didn't result in a usable interview. He was a great guy. But I can't even talk.
A younger guy?
He's younger than me.
Yeah.
I can't even talk about what kind of guy he was because he had been involved in some illegal things. And, for him, I don't think it would be good for him to write about anything that we spoke of. Maybe eventually I use some of it in fiction, or I might refer to something he told me that could be disguised while discussing crime. In a lot of ways, I have to say he's a hero of mine because some of the things that he's done, but he's been wounded in the process, in the soul part, and he had to drink a certain amount, not because he had to get drunk, but he had to see that I was for real. And he wanted to get me to drink as much as I could to let my guard down. I'm a pretty well-behaved drunk, and we ended up having a nice time that I think was good for him, and hopefully it was. I don't expect to see the guy again, actually.
Oh, that was my next question. Is sometimes the second meeting can be more productive?
I just think he needed somebody to talk to, and he thought that I wouldn't get upset at this discussion as many people would have gotten upset, just because I'm used to interviewing people about this type of thing. He came back from smoking a cigarette and was surprised I was still sitting there at one point. So we were speaking about the types of things that send some people scurrying for the door because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble because of their association. And so I think I slept for like 2.5 hours after that drinking bout, and then it took me 2 days to recover from that. Work was actually hard because I wasn't sleeping that much. I was trying to catch up on the writing I didn't do because I was sitting there drinking with him. And then I had to go to work and stock for the Hood Rat holiday of the 4th, which is a huge holiday among the oppressed in Baltimore. They will shop from midnight until 5 o'clock in the morning. And they'll rent tents and put tents up in alleys. They'll get balloons, and generally on their best behavior in areas where I'll run into this, because these are people that have escaped from areas where you can't have a party in your backyard because people will know that your nephew's among the partygoers, and you'll all get hosed down by 9mm fires. But he tries to assassinate him.
Well, this is interesting to me because we have heard. I think this happens a lot where there's a big difference between sort of like the national African American mouthpiece people and what black people actually like and do. So we're told that 4th of July or Independence Day is really not a true holiday for African Americans because, they were still slaves at that time, and that it's just a depressing day that nobody likes. But then you're telling me that's not really true in your neighborhood.
For the most part, blacks I know, unless they're in the military, don't recognize Memorial Day. They don't even know what it is. It's a cookout, but they're having a cookout every weekend anyhow. They have a lot more disposable food money for that. I would have to say, amongst African Americans in Baltimore, in the city and the county, it's the same population. The favorite holiday is Easter. By far the favorite holiday is Easter. And it's a clothing holiday. It's a dress-up holiday. It is not good for the food business. As soon as more money began getting diverted from stamp side, food side, to cash side, the supermarkets started losing some business to shoe and clothing retailers. So Easter is tops for blacks. 4th of July is right up there with Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh, wow.
For blacks, and both of them are pretty much even with Thanksgiving and Christmas. So that's like those 4 holidays. Those are your 4 top black holidays: 4th of July, Super Bowl Sunday, Thanksgiving, Christmas. They're better eaters generally than white people, so the food holidays are big for them. New Year's Eve, not so much. New Year's Eve is less popular amongst blacks than it is among the whites that I know of. I think there's probably a historical reason for that. There were some areas in Maryland and Virginia where black slaves were encouraged, almost forced, to spend a little bit of money they could scrape together doing side jobs to get drunk between Christmas and New Year's. They weren't even allowed to work and do side jobs during that time. They normally worked on Sunday for themselves and 6 days for the master. And there was some resentment about New Year's Eve that goes way back. So that's probably the only thing holding that back, because they're generally pretty hardy partiers. And as for Labor Day, there's no real connection to their psyche there either. Labor Day is not an important holiday for that community.
I remember a couple Memorial Days ago that some friends of mine went to go visit the gravesite of one of their grandfathers who was a veteran, and they knew it was a Veterans Day kind of a day, but they didn't know that it originated with the Civil War. And I was at work one day, and it was Veterans Day in November, and we were dealing with some people in Europe, and we were working, but they were having a holiday, and so that surprised everyone on the team, and they didn't know that it was Armistice Day from World War I. So I don't think that the significance of holidays, even religious holidays, is really preserved very well.
It's become what the Catholic holidays eventually became in medieval Europe, an excuse to party and forget the machinations of the ruling class.
Yeah, just a day off. We don't really care why or what.
Yesterday, the 4th of July was celebrated almost immediately by a pack of hood rats burning a Jeep Pathfinder with a soft top in front of the man's house. A man who was flying the American flag on a pole, and he flies it every day. And this is part of the ongoing race purge that's reached Baltimore County. And it's not going to ever be reported for what it is. I don't even know if this man realizes what it is. Plus, he had West Virginia tags on that vehicle. In Baltimore, West Virginia is regarded as the land of Nazi white supremacists. Seriously, there's no reason for that other than somehow it's thought of as being related to the South, even though it was a border state.
And they split
in the Civil War.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Bobby Lee could not hold. They called him the King of Spades when he was running the the Confederate operations against the Union forces in West Virginia. He couldn't hold ground there. All he did was dig trenches and still couldn't hold because most of the population was against the Confederacy because they were predominantly escaped white slaves.
Right. And that's and that's just forever lost, you know, and the whole there's just no nuance, you know. It's just the South is like Nazis in history.
The veil that's going over the stars and bars now is the American flag. When people started flying these American flags this time last year during the Trump-Clinton campaign, the guys that had previously been flying the stars and bars, they all switched to the American flag. These hood rats picked up on that. They're really not as stupid as people think they are. They might be stupid in a lot of ways, but when it comes to the war they're waging, they're not stupid. Mm-hmm. They make good, sound, tactical decisions most of the time, and they obey their leadership.
Yeah. I was gonna say if you get, I don't know if it's still on Netflix. I saw it years and years ago, but if you have access to Netflix one day, you should look for a documentary called "The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia."
Okay.
And it's about a family of people. Their surname is the Whites, and they have long history in West Virginia, and they're absolutely wild, as the title says. And it's sad because the big theme is really drug addiction, but it's just well worth watching if you get.
I have some connections to West Virginia through people that I knew. I'll look for that. I can see Netflix at Megan's, also at my son's place. That's where I view those things. We lived 20 miles from the West Virginia Panhandle of Wheeling. I knew guys that when they were 18 used to walk from Washington, PA, down to Wheeling, West Virginia to drink because it was 18-year drinking age in West Virginia. So I had friends when I was a teenager living in Western PA from West Virginia. And interestingly, when I began working in South Baltimore, I found out that the extreme southwest corner of South Baltimore near the Hanover Street Bridge is about 3 square blocks of people from West Virginia who are third generation they're grandchildren of people who hopped on the CSX railroad that goes through Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, and came into Baltimore to work at Domino Sugar and at the marine terminals and at the grain elevators that were served by this railroad line. And some of them worked on the railroads as well. Some of these guys were black. You had black guys and white guys from West Virginia with the same accent, the same easygoing temperament. The only violent person I ever met of West Virginia heritage was a guy that tried to kill me in a supermarket, and he was teamed up with this Italian from the Bronx. And he had a very good reason for wanting to kill me because I caught him conducting a felony. So I can't blame that on his heritage.
An Italian? You say
an Italian.
I love
Italian.
It.
This is something that drives my editor crazy when I say this, because my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, Mary Kern, who was a Quaid, which meant she was a long time ago descended from Irish McQuaids, who were enslaved by the Baltimores and the Talbots. So that's how she said it. She called them Italians.
Yeah, Italians. I don't mind. I'm mostly Italian. It doesn't bother me. Thank you for listening to part 1 of episode 4 of the Crackpot podcast with James LaFond and Lynn Lockhart.